Welcome to Epic Begins with One Step Forward, the podcast that reveals how to plan, achieve, and enjoy the journey of creating epic results in your life, business, health, and relationships. Here's your host, best-selling author and motivational speaker, Xander Sprague.
Hello, epic people, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Epic Begins with One Step Forward. I'm your host, Xander Sprague, and today I am so honored to be joined by Kimberly Haley-Coleman. Kimberly, tell us who you are and what you do.
Xander, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. My organization, we enable people who are up and ready to do an adventure and service somewhere in the world. Really short term, 1 week, knock your socks off, venture, something meaningful where you give back. That's what we do in a nutshell.
Wow, that sounds exciting. So sort of safe to say, adventure working holiday.
That's right. I mean, there are all sorts of terms out there, many of which I wouldn't use, like volunteer vacation, volunteerism, things like that. We really feel that we're separate from a lot of what we see out there. But yes, that is like a mini Peace Corps experience. That's right.
Okay, cool. Well, can you expand on that a little?
Absolutely. So,
what is something someone might Volun-Vacation, whatever we
yeah,
want to call
good.
it?
That's good. Yes, exactly. What would the Volun-Vacation look like? So, well, usually they're finding out about us from podcast, social media, whatever website or friend. And then they go to our website and just like a cruise, they will pick the date and the location. So we're in 26 countries and they're short term and they sign up. They register and pay. It's a tax deductible expense. And from the moment they show up, it's a shepherded experience. So our teams are usually 10 to 12 people. And our coordinator picks everybody up, is with them the whole time. Their, accommodations, the cultural and leisure excursions are built in. But the primary focus is on service. So the bulk of what we're doing will be about helping somebody stand on their own 2 feet. And to your question, that could mean installing concrete floors in the homes of single moms or assembling and distributing wheelchairs to landmine victims in Cambodia, or it might be building a wattle and daub style home in Kenya. So they really vary. They're all over the map. And people really determine what they're going to do by picking it out. They see ahead of time where they're going to Cuba, what they're going to be doing. And it's all a very structured experience with other like-minded people. And as you might imagine, the kinds of people that are drawn to do this kind of thing are really also fabulous, great people. So it turns out to be a really great experience in terms of bonding and meeting new people that's very different than other ways you might meet people. So it really does vary. They're very hands-on. And they are projects that are almost always designed to be finished in that week. And if for some reason something isn't finished, the weather isn't cooperating or the concrete didn't cure fast enough or whatever, we have another group of volunteers coming to the same location a week or two later. So everything is finished. And it's very easy for us to communicate and share this with social media so that people are able to stay connected to whatever project they've been on. So that's a bit more on what we do and how we do it. And I have to say, it's really our coordinators, our staff that are bringing the magic here, because they are straddling the community. They're from that community. They speak that language and English.
Right.
And they are working to make sure that, is this project needed? Is it actually going to help people stand on their own 2 feet?
Yeah.
And so they're the ones who do all that. They're the real magic there.
Sure.
Coordinators.
Definitely. And what is the name of this organization?
So I can't believe I left that out, Xander. Thank you. So we are called Globe
Keep talking about it.
Aware.
I don't think she said it.
We are
Aware.
Globe Aware. And
Globe
we
Aware.
really are, we're Globe Aware everywhere. I mean, we're Globe Aware on Instagram and LinkedIn and Spotify and YouTube. Really, any direction you look with those words, globe aware, that's us, global aware. And
That
we're
is
Canada-based as well. We've got Canadian and U.S. charity status.
awesome. Well, that is so cool. So I gotta ask, what have you done? What projects have you done?
I have done almost all of them. And when I started this back in year 2000, part of the big reason for me doing it is I just couldn't find any place that would let me volunteer in a really significant short-term way, and that was the big issue at the time. I feel like if you had 27 months to give the Peace Corps, you could do that. Or if you were a student or retired, you might be able to do an experience that isn't so tightly structured. You could get there and figure it out over time. And that was where I felt like a really big gap was. And so there are a couple of exceptions, but for the most part, I'm usually involved in when we're setting up the projects and programs and making sure that whatever that is fits. The local community has their set of criteria in terms of what they want, what they need. And then we have to run it past, is it safe? Is it culturally interesting? Is it going to be genuinely providing something to a needy community without causing dependence? We have our
Right.
own list of criteria. So that's where a lot of the work comes is trying to bring those two sets of criteria together to find what's gonna be where the Venn diagrams where they match. And so I'm usually involved in that.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So, what does one's day look like? Let's say they're in Kenya building a mud and wattle structure. What would my day look like? I land. I've picked up.
Yes.
I assume that we're staying. Are we sleeping out? Are we sleeping out under the stars? Is there what do the
By
accommodations
rhinos,
look
right?
like?
Yeah.
You know.
So there's quite a spectrum. I mean, with one exception, and we're in 26 countries. With one exception, we stay at what I would call mid-range accommodations. We have
Okay,
running
cool.
water and flushing toilets and electricity and doors and all that stuff.
Okay.
But it's not the Ritz,
No,
It's
absolutely.
and they tend to have more of a local feel. They tend to not look like just a Western style Motel 6, for example.
Got it.
When you're in India, you're in India. The look and feel. We try and find places that will really exude that culture, right? So that you can. But when our coordinator picks the volunteers up, some of it depends on where it is. So if you're in Costa Rica and there hasn't been a big time change, then
Yeah.
we'll often jump into the orientation. We'll have a few cultural exercises and go through what the work's going to be and have a welcome dinner. If you're going to India, we will often start with getting everybody checked in and resting. But once we get going with the week, we begin and close our day with specific exercises that are designed to tease out those things in the culture that a tourist wouldn't likely ever get from having visited.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, in Costa Rica, we'll start out on a Monday saying, hey, did you know in Costa Rica, we do not use snail mail addresses to mail things to each other. We write out a paragraph and we discuss that. Like, how can that be? What does that look like? Give me an example. You mean even Amazon, all of that. And then in the evening, we'll talk about, well, what's a kindness that each person observed today? Or what's something that you're grateful for today? And so we try and have these experiences that gel the program together and solidify in your mind some of what's happening because we're really putting volunteers in an environment where, the architecture is different, the food, the music, the way people dress, and even their philosophy about life. They when we're working on a project site, our volunteers are often so focused on this relentless drive for productivity, and the local culture often doesn't have that first and foremost in their mind. If it rains, they'll often stop and have a cup of coffee and think that the discussion you're going to have at that point is just as important as building the bathroom. And so, these experiences, we're trying to get that out of it too. What is it that's driving this country and this culture? What's important to them? What are the real beauties and the real challenges that you might not see if you're just a tourist coming off of a big cruise ship? and rushing through a community, going to the souvenir shop and going to churches and museums, all great, but we're wanting to provide something different and at a different scale.
Absolutely. So, like, how long are you, is it a workday, an 8-hour day
Yeah,
that obviously includes, a lunch break and stuff?
sure.
Or is it like 12-hour days, like just trying
So
to,
so it does vary, but, any warm location, we wanna get working quicker before it gets too hot.
yep,
So, we're often working by 8, and I'd say we put in a 5 to 8-hour day depending on how
cool.
fast we work, if anybody, really just needs a break, that kind of thing. So we aren't slave drivers, we respond to how the group's going, and sometimes they were working so fast that we'll finish something sooner than we anticipated, and because we are working side by side with the local community as equals. That is, again, part of the experience. It's that interaction between the volunteers and the local community that, again, that's just as important as any of the concrete that we're moving around. And we have these are, 1 week experiences, Sunday to Saturday, and that local community, they're also wanting to get to know us, right? Most of the communities where we are working, they don't have passports. They don't have the resources to get on a plane and go to North America. So, in a sense, we are also bringing part of North America to them. And we are also ambassadors in that sense. We are often, really how a community views North Americans. And so there's a piece here that is meaningful travel in a way of harmonizing, different countries and different cultures by showing that, hey, we could just write a check and it would be more efficient to send wheelchairs without coming and showing up in person. But that person to person effort is a huge value that's hard to specifically monetize. What is it worth when you have somebody show up in person as opposed to write a check? But that's where the memories are made, and that's where opinions are created, and where our mind space changes. So,
Absolutely. And I could say philanthropy's been part of my life. Like as I grew up, my parents instilled in me that there were things I was fortunate about. There are others that their situation is different, and that philanthropy, volunteering is important, right? And I have to say that as an adult, I like to give to places where I actually I don't just write a check and say, all right, there you go. I actually like to know, how has this impacted the program that I just supported? And so, I'll sit there and make a donation and say, and follow up and go, hey, I'm just interested. How were those wheelchairs? Do you have any pictures of people getting their wheelchairs? What's the story behind one of them, right? Because it does make a difference, and it makes me more willing to support an organization that's willing to not just take my money and say, oh yeah, we got them wheelchairs, you know,
right, yeah. Because it
because
because it really changes that the person, the service. I think so many people focus, understandably, on who is the recipient of something without recognizing that shared experience, that it's something is happening on both ends. And if you're just writing a check, you are shortchanging yourself in terms of what it does to your brain.
it's
So
also the
you
impact.
need it's the impact, it's all of it. It's such it's a rich experience. And look, I recognize that in a world where we've got climate change happening, we have to recognize that there is a carbon footprint every time you get on an airplane. So if we're going to get on an airplane, we really feel you got to maximize what's happening then, right? I think you're right that, and for people who haven't had a chance to really experience serving in this way, they don't know what joy comes out of it too. That it's not just, hey, I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do, or that I was told to do this, but what it does for your heart.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it is really amazing how what might seem to us to be a relatively standard, or I'll say minor contribution, radically changes not only the person who may be the individual or family that's a recipient, but the whole community,
Yeah.
right? And to be a part of helping some community be better, like
Yeah.
have something that they need and that brings value and perhaps improves some of their living,
Yeah.
right? Maybe
Well,
it's a community center or something, and all of a sudden people have a place to gather.
to gather, yes. Well, and so in our case, in Guatemala, for example,
Yeah.
we are, we're far off from where most tourists go, and we're in mine communities where there are a lot of single moms that are teenagers
Yep.
with young children without any sort of access to health care. And they are often living with a home they've made with whatever refuse they can find. It might be corrugated metal, it can be cardboard, it could be whatever, right on the open earth. And they're raising a child this way. And so their ability to, say, clean a floor that a baby is crawling on is pretty limited. And so the kinds of health issues that they face are pretty severe. And, so when we're going and working on this project, you're seeing all around how the standard of living that people are suffering through, and how if you put a big concrete foundation and walls that are even just a little more substantial, now you're able to bleach it. Now you're able to put a garden alongside it so that you're able to eat more than just corn and potatoes, but you can grow more. And how the pride that comes with that. There's something that happens when you're able to witness it and see it, when you're pumping the water that you are mixing the concrete with, and realizing that this is the same way that people are bathing and cooking. It means that the next time you go and brush your teeth at your hotel in the morning, you're often turning your water off between brushing your teeth because of what you just saw.
Yeah.
And you might have lectured your kids about this and why are you taking 45-minute showers? But somehow when your 12-year-old carries a bucket of water over to mix concrete, their view, they didn't need to be lectured anymore, right?
Yeah.
So they're seeing the importance of water and what a gift it is to have running water, so that again, it's the volunteer whose perspective has changed as much as, hey, having left a substantial difference for this single mom who's got some serious obstacles in terms of raising kids. And yet they will often see that, if you're in most of our communities, the amount of screen time most of the locals have, it's so minimal compared to what we have, and the amount of time they have with their friends and family and faith
Right.
is so much more than what we have, and that's a real beauty that you might not see if you're just, again, getting off of a cruise ship, going through and seeing the ruins of Tikal. You miss that's a real beauty, and that's our real goal, our real mission is that our participants, our volunteers are able to have a better sense for that. The reality in terms of the challenges that a local community faces, and the real beauties because they are also there.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think what you all are doing is fabulous. Of course, a logical question I'm sure my audience has is, so Kimberly, what does it cost to do one of your vacation projects?
Yes. So our programs, and yes, that's a good question. And it does vary. Our Cuba and Bhutan programs are much more expensive than our others for all sorts of reasons, but they're generally around $1,600, and that
Okay.
so they're pretty reasonable. But again, you're not staying at the Ritz, but it pays for your food, your bottled water, your accommodations, the project materials, medical insurance, things like that, and our coordination. And that is a big piece because our coordination is why people can come into these experiences cold, without speaking the language, without knowing how to mix concrete or anything else, that they're going in without any specific skills because we're hiring the local staff to work alongside us. And we're also wanting to make sure we are not replacing paid jobs locally. We need, for this to work the way we've always envisioned it, where it's win, win, win. We want the local community to always be happy when they see
Yeah,
us.
yeah,
Not
absolutely. Oh,
right,
no, here
right.
go
Oh
the
no,
Americans,
yeah.
and there's another week where I don't get
Where
paid,
I don't
but
get paid. Right, right. And we're also, if you're in Costa Rica, you're going to be seeing a soccer game at some point. Hopefully, you're going to jump in with the kids and play alongside with them and seeing, again, more of the traditional pace, a typical pace of how people spend their time and what's meaningful to them. So,
definitely, definitely. Well, I'm so interested, so many questions, Kimberly, so little time. Let's see, what has been one or two of your favorite destinations?
I'm always thinking so much either about where I've just come back from or where I'm about to go to. That tends to just
I get it.
weigh on my mind a lot. But I'm also drawn to places that are the least like our own, right? So I love India and the Philippines and Bhutan and Southeast Asia. And we have a real renewed appreciation for a lot of these places after, with COVID, for a couple years, we didn't get to do anywhere near what we normally would. And so
Right.
just the ability to go these far-flung places and get to see how people think and live differently has been such a joy. But yeah, I would say I'm always drawn to places like India, but all of our locations have something to offer. And I should say we quite selfishly choose project locations that will have some natural draw aside from the service. So for example, our project in Peru is in Cusco because we know everyone's going to want to see Machu Picchu.
Sure.
We're in Costa Rica. We're by
Well, that
the
kind of makes sense, Kimberly, because
yeah,
again, you're not working 24/7,
right,
and who wants to go, well, I went to an industrial park and
right,
spent my time in, you know, a warehouse. Although that may be very helpful, probably
right.
not going to get people to come back versus going, not only did I build this thing, but look at the pictures of,
Yes, but I did go
the
to the
rainforest.
rainforest, and
Yeah,
I did go ziplining, I did see volcanoes, and I did see all of that, right. And we know that. We wouldn't be around for this many years if we didn't know that, hey, there's gotta be a way to do all of it, to
right,
contribute significantly, meaningfully, still see all the things.
right,
And, that's what we're hoping that it will light that fire and inspire people, and generally, that is what happens. People usually people come to us not having served before, they're a little afraid, they're worried about the risks involved, and then once they've gone, usually they will start in Latin America, if they're North American, and they'll see how they were able to jump in without any sort of real advanced preparation. And they get bolder and they find themselves going further, to the African continent and further to Southeast Asia because that is what happens. They realize, oh, this is doable, and being the best or fast or strongest in any of this is absolutely immaterial. And they realize that just by participating, they're going to make a big impact. And so they're willing to go further and further. And that's been the progression we usually see is people will start closer to home and then expand their world pretty quickly thereafter.
absolutely. That is so interesting. So, just because my own purient curiosity, I love Africa. I've
Oh,
been
me too.
fortunate to travel there. Where are you in
In
Africa? What
Africa, well, so have you gone to South Africa?
I've been, I love South
I
Africa.
mean, people who haven't been to South Africa or they're just
You and I could do a whole,
I
honestly, an hour on South Africa.
just on Cape Town. I mean, there's just so much to see, and people who I mean, I love Europe. I would never miss a trip to Western Europe, but I'm amazed at how often people, there's some kind of fear that they have about going certain places. And if they just go and, look, you could swim with penguins and go to wineries and up to Table Mountain and to see, and yet also still see the amount of need in this planet. people who are trying so hard and with just a little bit of help, how much difference they can make. I see all of that in one thing. So our projects and programs in Africa are in Kenya, South Africa, Malawi, Tanzania. I'm leaving something out. We have a Zimbabwe. And Zimbabwe, that one's interesting. It's the only one we have like this where it's once a year, where you fly in and out of Victoria Falls, which that's another place like South Africa. For
I
people who-
love, I
yeah,
love,
I
I
mean,
love
Zimbabwe
Victoria
is
Falls.
just, you know,
Although it's
jaw
not as,
dropping. You're going to be focused more, animals probably and waterfalls if you go to. But what we do, that once a year thing, is a game count. It's a census that the local wildlife organizations put on once a year so that they have some sense of the migration of animals and what's happening. The way they do it, there are 300 of us, almost all are Zimbabwean, and then our volunteers. And we have 2 or 3 people assigned per watering spot, whether it might be a river, it might be a sea pole, it could be any number of a thing, with the thought that once during any 24-hour period, every animal will go for water.
right.
And so we sit there for 24 hours in the driest month of the year, which is usually October, November, because there's the least amount of vegetation.
Yep.
Under a full moon, so that we've got full visibility. And for 24 hours, we count all the animals, the lions, the zebras, the ostriches, the elephants. And then we meet all the Zimbabweans doing it too. And again, that one's only once a year, but it is really extraordinary and special. And even if you've done safaris, you haven't done this and had elephants come up to your car at night with their babies. And anyway, it is really magical. So we're doing wildlife protection programs as well. Although I would say 85% of our programs are more focused on human beings. So
I got it. Well, yeah, I have to say that sounds fabulous. I've been to Victoria Falls a few times. It is spectacularly beautiful, and getting to see the wild animals. Honestly, the reason I'm going, I want to see the animals. Cape Town is great. Table Mountain is great. I assume that you've been down to the Cape of Good Hope.
Yes. Yeah. And the penguins at Boulder Beach and the
absolutely.
ostriches there. Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's just.
Love it. Now, I do have to say, I got to ask you of your opinion. So I went to the Cape of Good Hope the first time, and I was all excited. And you know how sometimes you have those experiences, Kimberly, where you weren't aware that you had a preconceived idea of what the experience would be like, but you get there and figure out that you did. So I got there, I'm like, I'm going to see the end of the African continent. And I guess I somehow thought there would be somehow like Klieg lights and maybe a tent, and James Earl Jones go, the end of the African continent. So I get there and I go out there, and technically the Indian Ocean's to my left and the Atlantic is to the right, and here they're meeting and have a kind of underwhelming. I don't want to say it wasn't beautiful, but honestly, I could have been standing on any rocky outcrop.
Sure. Yeah.
So
Sure.
did you kind of have that experience where you're all excited, but then you're like, okay.
So here's, I know what you're saying. And, there's just a sign there that says Cape, and sometimes there's a line of 40 people you're waiting on just to get the picture with the sign that says Cape of Good Hope. But it's all the stuff around it that really gets me excited about, like seeing wild ostriches there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And a lot of people don't see the wild ostriches because I guess they don't know to look for them, and they can blend in with the landscape there. But then on the way, stopping and getting on the beach with the penguins, Boulder Beach, a lot of people go to the deck where you pay without knowing that if you go to the right and enter from the backside, you get on the beach with them,
Yeah.
And some of it is, the day you go, who you go with, how you do it, all of those things. But
Absolutely.
I would never turn down a trip to South Africa for any reason either. And Zimbabwe, I want to say, Zimbabwe and Zambia, Botswana, you have an opportunity to see animals in an even less, more of their natural habitat.
Absolutely.
There are no, unlike, Kruger, Wangi doesn't have any sort of barriers between the countries so that the animals are migrating in a much more natural way. And so people who've just gone and seen, if they go up to Hedspruit in South Africa and are seen, if they're on a road at Kruger behind 20 other cars because a lion stopped up above, it's different than going to Wangi and being where the animals are.
I,
And yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I've done safaris up at like Londolozi and stuff, which is private game preserve on the edge of Kruger, and being, as I like to joke, dangerously close to animals that can kill me
yes,
is they're not going to. I want to let everyone know they aren't. But I have been like 5 feet away from a pride of lions, and even though I'm like, yes, I know I'm safe as long as I stay in the Land Rover and don't like, oh, hold on, let me get out and pet them and stuff. It's still amazing at how close you get to them. Again, without sounding like it's stupid, but you probably had this experience. Elephants are really
oh,
big animals.
yeah,
Oh my God.
yeah,
If you're, like you say, you're on the watering, you're doing the census count. If you're on the ground
yeah,
and an elephant comes up, it is
yeah,
a large,
yeah.
even if it's a baby, it is still a large animal. Never mind, I was happened to come out one time and going into the parking lot, and there's a bull elephant. Oh my gosh, I felt so tiny. I'm like, I felt like it could have just stepped on me like I was a grape.
Well, I will say, there's no way to eliminate all risk. And when you are with animals in those environments, while there are a lot of precautions and things done for safety, when we have babies come up to because you're in a vehicle,
Yep,
if a baby comes up to your car, her mom's going to come too.
yep.
And mom's serious. You know,
Oh yeah,
you,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you,
yeah, yeah.
she wants to knock your car over. You let her. Everybody's just quiet and it doesn't make any noise and lets mom come over because that and hippos, people I think don't realize,
Thank you.
hippos on a street at night, that's not funny,
No,
there are
well, I mean,
people. Yeah,
hippos kill the most number of people of any animal
yeah.
in the world.
And that is something that our volunteers often have never heard is while there is this majesty of being around wildlife and an element like this, a lot of the communities where we work that don't have the kind of resources that our volunteers might don't recognize some of the wildlife human conflict that exists. So, for example, lions that maim and kill humans if they're having to walk too far to a watering hole to pump water, or elephants ruining gardens that people have planted to depend on. And so there's both things happening, this majesty and appreciation of the wonderful wildlife, and yet looking at how does the local community manage and address that big, huge budding up of humanity and wildlife where they might be competing for resources. So it's an interesting way of looking at how life can be such a, oh my God, the African continent to me. Yeah, I agree.
It's like
There's
going
just so
home,
much to
isn't
see
it?
and know. Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. When I go there, it's sort of like part of me feels like I'm somehow home.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
how else to describe it, but there's Africa definitely is in my heart. That's all
Yeah,
I'll say.
I agree. Somehow that connection to life and reconnecting to our place in the universe, I feel like you can do it there for so many reasons. Easy if
Absolutely.
you're stuck in kind of a dog eat dog cubicle corporate world to feel disconnected from that. You go to Africa and yeah, you get a renewed sense of your connection to the world, to the planet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Kimberly, I'm sure you and I could talk at least for another hour about how awesome South Africa is and Zimbabwe and Zambia and stuff. But I want to thank you so much. How can people find you, come and do a vacation, a Volun-Vacation, whatever you want to call it?
We are so easy to find. The biggest mistake people might make is they might think we're global aware, but we're globe aware. So 3 syllables.
Mhm.
So if they Google that or look at we have a podcast where we tell people about our programs and how to prepare for travel, various places. And we have a YouTube channel, certainly a website, Instagram, Facebook, all that. Any direction you look with those words, global aware, with that handle, you'll find us. And our phone number is on the website too. I'll tell you, 877 Love Globe, LUVGLOBE. Love Globe is our 1-800 number. It's easier to remember. But anyway, thank you for asking, because we're everywhere.
Awesome. I want to thank you so much for coming on. Truly an epic conversation. I want to remind everyone that if you're ready to begin your epic journey, go to epicbegins.com. And as always, remember, epic choices lead to the epic life that you want.
Get your gift copy of the award-winning book, Epic Begins with One Step Forward, at epicbegins.com. That's a wrap on this episode of Epic Begins with One Step Forward with your host, Xander Sprague, best-selling author, internationally acclaimed public speaker, and licensed professional clinical counselor. To make your next conference or event epic, send an email to Xander at zander@epicbegins.com. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Remember, epic choices, epic life.